On the Heavenly Spheres. Chapter 5, page 51, subtitle Interpretation of Planets and Signs. To determine the effect of planets and signs, one must combine the nature of a planet with the sign in which it finds itself. The planet will have its own expression and natural signification altered by the characteristics of the sign. The result will be more or less fluid depending on the agreement between the natures of the planet and the sign. Never forget that the focus of the interpretation is always centered on the planet. The planet indicates what is in play. For example, Mars indicates action, combat, etc. The sign refers to the traits by which its expression itself, for example, Taurus, indicates a solid and slow expression, while Cancer represents an expression that is emotional and variable. Let's take the moon as an example. Its significations include, among other things, the moods, emotional tones, and sensibilities of an individual. If it is positioned in Leo, those moods will acquire the characteristics of this sign. We have then a fiery sign, hot and dry, with a dynamic expression, positive and enthusiastic, a masculine diurnal sign, therefore extroverted, a fixed sign, possessing confident and lasting action. In this manner, the moods and emotions represented by the moon in Leo will be enthusiastic, positive, fire, caloric, not passing without notice, masculine and diurnal. Their expressions will be firm, possibly often being stubborn because of its fixed nature. The expression of the planet is more joyful and extroverted, but less receptive since its natural sensibility of the moon is diminished in a hot and dry sign, which contradicts the cold and moist phlegmatic facet of the luminary. Also, the natural plasticity of the moon will be more restrained because of the fixed nature of Leo. There's a little box, little subset over here I'm going to read real quick. In astrology, what is important is understanding, not memorization. It is critical to possess a solid understanding of the nature of each planet and sign in order to understand the result of any planet sign combination. The student who internalizes this understanding will be able to handle any combination without having to depend on a cookbook, descriptions, or descriptive tables. So it's like know the pieces of the puzzle so you can put together the puzzle you want or what the puzzle's telling you. Know the pieces, how all the pieces can come together to create different archetypes. Okay, moving on. If we consider another fire sign such as Aries, we discover that the traits of enthusiasm, affirmation, and extroversion are common. Nonetheless, a moon in Aries portrays a greater restlessness and propensity for activity since it's a movable sign, movable cardinal. Similarly, a moon in Sagittarius, a mutable fire sign, acquires a more adaptable, multifaceted, dispersed expression. It is also important to note the impact of the ruling planet of the signs, of which we'll speak in more detail ahead. In this case, the Sun, the ruler of Leo, Mars, ruler of Aries, Jupiter, ruler of Sagittarius. The moon in Leo will portray distinctively positive traits. In Aries, more bellicose and sharp ones. And in Sagittarius, an advocating Jupiter type motivation. We may also consider the secondary attributes of the signs. Leo is a fierce sign, which indicates a more intense and domineering emotional expression than in other fire signs. On the other hand, Leo, Aries, and Sagittarius are bestial signs, which implies more abrupt attitudes with greater negative social impact. Of the fire signs, Sagittarius has a double aspect, since it is depicted by a figure that is half man and half animal, which makes it swing between, abruptness and sociability. Notwithstanding, the fluctuations are softened by Sagittarius also being in autumn, which is calmer, sign and having Jupiter, the planet of moderation, as its ruler. If we consider by contrast the moon in Capricorn, the delineation will be very different. In this case, we have a cold and dry sign of air, melancholic, feminine and nocturnal, and movable. Here, the attitudes and the emotions, by movable, they mean cardinal. Here, the attitudes and emotions signified by the moon will have a more discreet and restrained expression, feminine and nocturnal, overlaid by a pragmatic and slightly suspicious and cautious earth melancholic attitude, but which is very active and dynamic, movable cardinal. Again, we have a quadruped sign, making its expression a bit abrupt, as in previous examples, although moderated by earth element, and by the sobriety of its ruler, Saturn. The same rationale should be applied to the remaining planets and signs. We repeat, it is of no use to memorize the signification of a planet in each sign. What is truly important is to understand the astrological principles that are at the root of these significations. To note, another box. In the box, we read, note, although each planet always has natural significations, like Mars signifies action, Venus affection, Mercury understanding, etc., what is truly important in interpretation is the particular signification that each planet acquires in the chart. The position by sign gives us only the qualities through which the celestial body expresses itself. It does not indicate its function or importance in the general context of the horoscope. This information is given to us from the house position and by the rules of delineation. The interpretation by sign is only made by beginners as a practice exercise. All right. Characteristics and description by sign. Don't memorize this. Aries. Hot and dry, choleric, movable, ruled by Mars. This little thing next to it says its behavioral expression is characterized by impulsivity and rapid response. Action is at the core of its motivations. It describes an enthusiastic and passionate attitude that can also be a bit abrupt and precipitated and often aggressive. The expression is emotive and expansive, but it lacks a degree of sensibility, tact, and subtlety. Taurus, we have cold and dry, melancholic, and ruled by Venus. Characterizes a calm, pondered behavior with a tendency towards inertia and laziness. The attitude is pragmatic, practical, and centered on comfort and satisfaction. Not given to action, it tends to be more reactive to external stimuli than its initiate actions. It cultivates security and stability. The emotional expression is made through physical demonstrations or concrete expressions. We have Gemini, hot and moist, sanguine, double or common, mutable, ruled by Mercury. Its behavioral expression is characterized by curiosity, a variety of interests, and the capacity to change one's attention from one topic to another. It exhibits great dynamism, especially at the intellectual or social level, but the expression tends to be dispersed, often manifesting itself with volatility and inconsistency. It tends to be more rational than emotive. Air. Cancer. Hot and moist, phlegmatic, movable, cardinal, and ruled by the moon. Behaviorally, it exhibits a calm, receptive, and sympathetic attitude, but subject to emotional ups and downs, since emotional security is at the core of its behavior. It represents, it responds easily to changes in the environment, but in a defensive or hesitant manner. Leo. For Leo, we have hot and dry, choleric, fixed, and ruled by the sun. The behavioral expression is characterized by a natural radiance, which results in an affirmative and dominant attitude. Its actions are firm and consequential, although personal in perspective. A generous and warm personal expression, but simultaneously not very receptive or not very receptive, and also exhibiting some abruptness and impulsivity. Next, Virgo, cold and dry, melancholic, double or common, mutable, ruled by Mercury. The behavior represented by this sign is distinguished by the utilitarian, practical, and detailed expression. The expression is agitated, very focused on conceptual questions and practical details. The actions are precise but tend to get lost in a multiplicity of details. The rational streaks predominates, which makes emotional expressions appear dry. Libra. Hot and moist, sanguine, fixed. No, movable. Sorry, my eyes went to the wrong thing. I went to Scorpio. With Libra, we have a cardinal sign, movable, and ruled by Venus. There's great attention to social interactions, which acquire a dynamic and varied expression. It cultivates contacts, friendships, and groups, tending to maintain a socially acceptable and conservative expression. It tends to express itself in a more rational than emotive manner and cultivates moderation. Scorpio, where my eyes fell for fixed. Cold and moist, phlegmatic, fixed, ruled by Mars. It represents a contained, introverted, and defensive expression. The actions are based upon security and emotional control, giving rise to distrust and caution. With a reserved expression, it avoids showing feelings and sensitivity. Sagittarius, we have hot and dry, choleric, double or common, mutable, ruled by Jupiter. It is characterized by an active and dynamic expression. Uh-oh. Very adaptive and good humored. The actions are expansive and expressive with a certain idealistic and self righteous inclination. It avoids showing feelings and sensitivity. No, wait. Okay. Shit. I think I kind of got mixed up. I'm going to go back to my little thing. Scorpio, cold and moist, phlegmatic, fixed, ruled by Mars. It represents a contained, introverted, and defensive expression. The actions are based upon security and emotional control, giving rise to distrust and caution. With a reserved expression, it avoids showing feelings and sensitivity. Okay, Sagittarius. Hot and dry, choleric, double or common, mutable, ruled by Jupiter. It is characterized by an active and dynamic expression, very adaptive and good humored. These actions are expansive and expressive with a certain idealistic and self righteous inclination. Its nature is adventurous and experimental and optimistic. I have a Gemini moon, so sometimes I have to do things twice because I just read both of those twice. Capricorn, cold and dry, melancholic, movable, cardinal, ruled by Saturn. The behavior is firm and enterprising. The motivation is pragmatic, centered on practical and useful actions, which combine objectivity with dynamism. The emotional expression is restrained, vacillating between sobriety and reserve. For Aquarius, we have hot and moist, which is sanguine. We have fixed and ruled by Saturn. A taste for concept and ideals to which the mind adheres in a persevering and often stubborn manner. It cultivates its own manner of acting, distancing itself from anything that is of a general mindset. Not very emotional, it tends to be more theoretical than practical. For Pisces, cold and moist, phlegmatic, mutable, or as I like to say in this book, double or common, ruled by Jupiter. Calm and receptive, and of a sentimental nature, of plastic and adaptive nature, sometimes fickle since the actions are based upon sentiments and the sensibilities of the moment. At ease attitude to the point of dispersal or disregard. Okay. In other astrological contexts, as in mundane or horary, a planet may represent actions or animated objects. In these cases, the attributes listed above will represent the characteristics of that action or object. Let us take the moon once more as an example. Generally, an action represented by the moon would be fast, given the moon is the fastest planet. Of great visibility, it is a luminary, and with a strong emotional element. It symbolizes the emotional nature, but short lived because it has such a changeable nature. If positioned in Leo, it represents an action that is enthusiastic and intense, fire, but controlled and restricted because of the fixed nature. And Capricorn, it signifies an action that is faster or more sudden, because this is a cardinal energy, but also discreet, orderly, and objective, which is Earth. If we refer to an object, the moon, if we refer to an object, a thing. The moon may represent, along with many other things, a glass or cup, which is receptivity. If positioned in Leo, the cup will be eye-catching and shiny, fire, possibly golden because of the sun, but with a heavy appearance, fixed, whose function will be to adorn or symbolize status. A moon in Capricorn will represent a cup of a darker, more plain metal, which is Earth, of little worth or old, which is Saturn, of easy use, which is cardinal, movable, and with a practical function, Earth. And in this box, a little sub box here, the behaviors indicated by the sign must always be combined with the planet that occupies it. For example, the enthusiastic behavior represented by Cancer will be expressed differently by Saturn and more cautious and reserved, or by Mars, which is more assertive and dynamic. I think we are going to save this next subtitle for the next video. Bye.